For families like mine, this is a interesting time of year. We had Loving Day last week, and we have Slave Freedom Day tomorrow, or as most people call it, Juneteenth. And for those of us who have interracial families, this is a time of year for introspection, at least for me. And I want to be clear, there is no wrong or right way to observe these type of days. There is your way. Some communities celebrate, have barbecues and have parties, and I can completely understand that. Other communities try to ignore this day, and I can understand wanting to do that. You shouldn't, but I can understand it. And hopefully, during these times, that group who usually ignores this time of year will decide to take a look through history and examine, our path through history. History is not a pretty place, but it must be looked at, so we know not to do that again. That's the reason we teach history. So we learn from our mistakes, so we can become better people. We need to be very careful about judging people of the past, not because what they did was immoral, because most of history was immoral from a modern standard, but because we must know where we came from. The journey loses its value if we don't know where we started. And so while some history must pass, it is time. Some statues should come down. Some names are perfectly fine to go into history books and fade into dust in a library somewhere. But we also have to be careful not to do that in an emotional rush, because we can accidentally whitewash more history than we intend. So I would never say, don't take statues down, don't rename buildings, don't rename schools. But I do say be careful. We don't want to do more than we should. But let's get back to the Slave Freedom Day, or Slave Remembrance Day, as I am choosing to call it. Slavery Remembrance Day, I apologize. The reason, as an interracial family, I look at this differently is because we had a different path through racism. In a sense, in a crude way, you can make an argument we saw it from both sides, but that's a disservice. Racism isn't binary. I know history, and for a lot of communities, it is binary, because it just is, right? It looks that way, and because of those perspectives of those communities, it is that way. But our communities are becoming more complex. Loving Day was the day interracial marriages became legal. That couldn't have happened without Emancipation Day. These things lead to another. Not all slippery slopes are bad. Some slippery slopes lead to good outcomes. But the path through racism is complicated. When my children were young, there was a period of time where we couldn't walk to the park without people singing Jungle Fever. And that's about the most pleasant thing that happened during that time period. Logically, you can understand what people were expressing was a fear of cultural loss. But that's not very comforting to your wife or your children who don't understand. That doesn't make you feel safer. It makes you empathetic, even sympathetic. But you still have your own path to get through. And my children, growing up in ethnically diverse neighborhoods, had their own path of racism to walk through and to deal with. and to navigate. And now I get to watch my young grandson grow up in my house. And, he has a black mother and a interracial father. And so all these worries that the world faces, I have to face. It's true. I didn't have to face some of the dangers and some of the concerns other people did. In the same token, other people didn't have to face the same worries and dangers that I did. Is one worse, better than the other? No. They're just different. Does that mean systemic racism doesn't exist? No, it does. And it's corroded our whole culture. Systemic racism actually helps maintain that interracial racism that we have to deal with. It's ingrained in our culture. We can't separate these things. It's not how life works. Life isn't binary. And the question is, how do we all move forward? Right? We have a government and a police that have become abusive. It no longer seems that citizens are fully human. We're just things to be pushed around and bullied. When we complain, what do we get? A stick or a patronizing? Or more mandates? They don't seem to understand that in order to change the system, we have to change our mindset first. You cannot change a racially systemic issue without changing the way the system works. Because you can run all the racists out, but the predators and bullies will still be there. And the system will still protect them. And then we're all in danger. We have to fundamentally change how we solve problems. Laws, dictates, mandates for solving social issues have to stop. Just today, there was a mandate for mask wearing. It's a little late. And while wearing a mask is a good idea, especially in confined areas and crowded areas, creating another opportunity for an abusive encounter is probably not one. It's probably not worth the long time risk. We have to stop isolating these decisions. You can't say we have an abusive racist system and then say, here, system, here's some more power. That doesn't make any sense. We want to defund the police, but we want to ask them to intervene more often? It doesn't make any sense. We have a problem with social engineering, and our politicians want to engage in more social engineering. Using force to solve problems is morally wrong. And it creates backlash. And if there's one thing we should have learned in the last 50 years, is that the backlash is more dangerous. The silent majority votes. The write checks and they influence things behind the scenes in places we can't see. And we don't have a culture of transparency. They will talk a good game. They will take statues down. They will rename brands. They will do all these things. Don't confuse movement with progress. time will go on, we will vote the same, and nothing will change. We've proven this. I have tried to find a way to run the most positive campaign I can, and every time I look at and turn around, we fail. But we'll keep trying. If you would like to help, you can please go to justforassembly.com, click the donate or join button, join the Facebook group, and we can find you something to do. I hate doing that on the end of these things, but yeah. There are some parts of being a politician I really don't like. But you know what I don't like more? The way the political class is running things. And if we want to change that, we have to have the courage to vote differently. And I hope to earn your vote November. Thank you. Good night, and love everybody.